Hi, I'm Max. Kaiser. This is the Kaiser Report. I'm here with the lovely, the talented, the vivacious, the intelligent Stacy, who will now take us through into the next segment of what you're watching here now. Stacy.
Okay, Max. Well, you know what? The Mexicans have provided us with a great solution to corrupt politicians and bad things, corruption, crime, all that sort of stuff. Because there's a town in Mexico called Cheran, the Mexican indigenous community that ran politicians out of town. Cheran and the violent state of Michoacan will stand apart from Mexico's electioneering season, having tackled corruption and exploitation by banishing political parties, police, and gangsters. This is an article from April. Back in 2011, they banned all politicians and political parties from ever operating in their town. And you know what happened? Crime ended. There used to be a lot of kidnappings and torture and things like that, and everything, crime collapsed. It went plummeted once they kicked out the politicians, because it was the politicians who were basically enabling and facilitating the criminals. And I think you can see that maybe not so violently in much of the other parts of the world, but I think you see that to varying degrees all over. But they ended crime completely by not only driving out the politicians, but also the policemen. They kicked the policemen out of town.
You know, I saw that story, and the very first thing I thought of was Jeff Berwick down there in Acapulco. He does the dollar vigilante, and he's an anarchist, and that is anarchy. It's anarchy in that there is no centralized authority that is corruptible, that leads to all kinds of bad outcomes. When you have anarchy, you've got decentralization of power. You have the wherewithal to have a more peaceful existence. And anarchy is a peaceful kind of philosophy, political philosophy. And he's also in Mexico as well. He's down there in Acapulco, where they have a lot of guns. And
neighboring
a lot of crime.
state. So this is Michoacan. He's in Guerrero, which is where Acapulco is. Very violent state, of course, as well. But here, these are the indigenous people, the indigenous Purepecha town of Cheran threw out all political parties after a popular uprising in 2011, and it does not want them back. The only thing the parties have done is divide us, said Salvador Ceja, Cheran's communal lands commissioner, not just here, but in the entire country. The whole thing, when they kicked these people out, all the politicians and the policemen, they kicked them out in 2011 because much of the antipathy can be traced back to the situation in the early part of the decade when the surrounding area was dominated by illegal loggers who clear-cut local forests and hauled out dozens of truckloads of logs each week with the protection of a local drug cartel and the collusion of corrupt police and local politicians. So they drove out the police and the politicians, and then the illegal logging stopped because the people wanted their environment, their local environment, to be nice and not have the illegal loggers there. And therefore, because there was no politician and police officers basically enabling their illegal activities, it had to stop.
A lot of problems with the managing communities, of course, has to do with managing one's medium of exchange. You know, the money, the trade, the gold, whatever it might be. And you're giving some authority and some power to some entity that would have dominion over said money or gold. Now, with cryptocurrencies, again, Jeff Berwick being way ahead of the curve on this, you eliminate the need for any centralized fiat currency or gold exchanging entity as well. So add cryptocurrency to that community, and you have the model for global growth based on anarchy and localism. And that could be, that's just the entire global crypto community. Whale Panda, Fluffy Pony, Charlie Lee, and Jimmy Song, and the whole Magic Crypto Circle show. You guys should go to this town in Mexico and plant the flag of crypto. Stop squabbling and leave navel alone. Leave navel alone and do something productive with your lives. You know who I'm saying about.
Well, hopefully you didn't blow out that audio there. But you know what? So, again, this was written in April. This was obviously in the July 1st elections. We had Obrador win. But before that, why they were saying they're adamant that nobody's allowed to vote in this town for those parties. Quote, we can't put a project like this at risk in order to participate in the federal election, Chavez said. If we let in an election like this with polling stations and all that accompanies that, the parties are going to want to get back in here. Political parties have occasionally attempted to campaign in the town only to be escorted out by the local Ronda, the citizen-run security force formed after the uprising.
There's a great film called The Face on the Crowd, I believe, with talking about how a nobody is turned via the media into a political superstar, and it creates all kinds of problems. Or Robert Redford in that film, The Candidate. All politics is nonsense, essentially. It's just meant to smooth over some inadequacies in what should be a matriarchy or what should be paganism or polytheism. All monotheism, all political parties, all centralization should be rejected in favor of more of a matriarchal, polytheistic, kind of pagan-worshipping deities that are what we see in the crypto community. There's a whole bunch of great cryptos out there. There's Monero. We mentioned Fluffy Pony. There's Litecoin. We mentioned Charlie Lee.
Yeah, but instead...
Whale Panda has no coin.
And instead we have these duopolies. In the U.S. we have a duopoly. And I think this statement, if you go to this town, Cheran, what you see are a lot of graffiti, murals, all that sort of stuff. And one of the bits of mural says, whole parties, Cheran is not a toy. Cheran is not a toy. So there's, I'm sure that you got bleeped there, but, you know, if you go read the article, you'll see that I think these political parties, and you see it in the United States, the hyper-partisanship, it doesn't benefit the people. It benefits the ratings of MSNBC or the ratings of Fox. It benefits the lobbyists. It benefits the political parties themselves because, of course, they get more donations from fanatical supporters. So, you know.
It's an amazing story because they had to politically get together and decide to get rid of all politics.
Yes.
Right? They had to vote to get rid of voting.
Yeah.
And then they did.
Yeah.
And now there's no more voting. And they don't want any parties to come back ever again. And there's peace and love in the valley because people are by nature communal. Okay? That's the big secret about life on planet Earth, is that rugged individualism and Ayn Rand are false. Altruism is actually the most successful coping strategy we have as a living species on planet Earth. Look at the other organisms, the trees, for example, the flowers, even the rocks and the stones have an inert soul that is contingent upon a network effect of extraterrestrialism that is imbuing every moment of every breath taken.
I have established here that this town of Cheran in Mexico.
Cheran.
Okay. And the indigenous people decided that politicians merely divide the people, not only locally, but federally. They divide the people, and that's what they do. They also allow for all this toxic waste and the destruction of the environment in the area because of profit. And that's what they didn't want them. And in fact, they found that when they basically banned politicians and they banned the police, crime fell. So I'm going to turn to this article from the United States where you see similar ingredients. Pence family's failed gas stations cost taxpayers $20 million plus. Vice President Mike Pence turns nostalgic when he talks about growing up in small-town Columbus, Indiana, where his father helped build a Midwestern empire of more than 200 gas stations that provided an upbringing on, quote, the front row of the American dream. The collapse of Cale Brothers Oil Company in 2004 was widely publicized. Less well known is that the state of Indiana and to a smaller extent Kentucky and Illinois are still on the hook for millions of dollars to clean up more than 85 contaminated sites across the three states, including underground tanks that leaked toxic chemicals into soil, streams, and wells.
That's exactly what I'm saying. There is no rugged individualism. There's no Ayn Randyism in the economy. You have Mike Pence, who is spewing propaganda nonsense, ignoring the externalities of his business,
his
the
dream,
energy business.
Yeah, exactly. His one family, their one dream, he and his brother and the father, their family got to benefit hugely while the rest of the costs were socialized to the rest of the
That's what monotheism, it gives him the temerity and the narcissism to believe that the garbage that his family spewed is not his garbage. He doesn't see that because he's a man of his monotheistic beliefs, could ever generate the amount of toxic garbage that his family did.
Okay.
But
let's talk about. Let's get back down to like real world economics.
I'm connecting the dots.
Okay.
I'm connecting the stripes.
Okay.
These are the stripes, and they're all connected.
So Mike Pence was then a third-year congressman, lost more than $600,000 when the company went under. He later became Indiana governor and now has assets worth $532,000 and $1.13 million. Greg Pence, who is his brother, who is seeking the vice president's old congressional seat now, has a total assets worth $5.7 to $26 million. Mike Pence was head of the company, not Mike Pence, but his brother Greg Pence was head of the company when it went under in 2004. He's now running to be congressman in Indiana. His net worth is between $5.7 and $26 million, and yet he's asking the taxpayer. Well, he didn't even ask. He just told the taxpayer, you're going to pay for my cleanup because I'm not going to pay for the cleanup. So either live with the toxic waste in your environment because I'm not paying for it, or you pay for it.
Right, that's what politics becomes. It becomes the last refuge of a scoundrel, somebody once said. So in order to escape being thrown in jail, these people, they become politicians to change the law. Okay, Hillary Clinton comes to mind. Bill Clinton comes to mind, right?
Well, that's what the people of Cheran also showed, is like you don't want these politicians. Just get rid of the politicians, and then this will be dealt with in a more, less violent manner
give them
to
oxygen.
the people.
Then they won't thrive. To corrupt and destroy.
Well, this is what Mike Pence and Greg Pence, their family, essentially did. They deprived the people of oxygen, of a clean environment.
That's right. Because of monotheism. I think if you want to look at this from the biggest possible picture, that's the problem.
Well, I don't think that, but also, the state governments have to pay. Indiana's paid over $20 million, but the federal government, meanwhile, plans to clean up a plume of cancer-causing solvent discovered beneath a former Keel Brothers station that threatens drinking water near the Pence family's home.
He's not the vice president. He's the president of Vice. This guy is me. Get out! Get out! Get out! Oh, I guess we have to take a break. And then when we come back, there'll be like so much more that you'll wonder why you stayed.